You've probably noticed this. You explain something carefully. You slow down. You choose simple words. The other person listens. They nod. They even agree. And yet somehow nothing changes. The same mistake repeats. The same confusion comes back. The same conversation happens again. At some point you start wondering, is this really a communication problem? Niccolo Machiavelli spent his life watching people in power face this exact situation. Not in conversations, but in courts, councils, and cities. He noticed something uncomfortable. Most people don't fail to understand because ideas are unclear. They fail because they process the world in a much narrower way. They respond to emotion, habit, and authority, not careful reasoning. So when you keep explaining, you're not helping them understand. You're doing something else, something Machiavelli warned leaders never to do. Machiavelli never assumed people were rational. This is the first mistake most intelligent people make. They believe that if an idea is logical, it will eventually be accepted. If it's explained clearly, it will be understood. If they stay calm and patient, things will improve. Machiavelli saw the opposite. He observed that most people don't respond to reasoning first. They respond to position. Who is speaking? From where? With how much certainty? Understanding often comes later, if it comes at all. This is why explaining yourself too much quietly works against you. Not because explanation is bad, but because who you explain to matters more than how you explain. When someone keeps asking you to explain yourself, it doesn't always mean they want clarity. Very often, it means they are unsure whether they should accept your position. So they ask, "Why did you do that? Why does it have to be this way? Can you explain that again?" On the surface, these seem like honest questions. But Machiavelli noticed something important. Questions can also be a way to test authority. Each explanation slows the interaction down. Each clarification opens the door to doubt. Each added reason turns a decision into a discussion. And once something becomes a discussion, the person asking the questions feels equal to the one answering them. That shift is subtle, but powerful. The problem is not intelligence, it's position. This is where people misunderstand Machiavelli. He wasn't saying people are stupid. He was saying people are situational. Most people don't ask, "Is this correct?" They ask, "Who is saying this? Do others accept it? What happens if I don't?" So when you keep explaining yourself, you unintentionally move yourself into a weaker position. You look like someone seeking approval, not someone setting direction. And people respond accordingly. Not everyone should be spoken to in the same way. Some people can handle reasoning. They think step by step. They can sit with uncertainty and complexity. But most people prefer clarity over truth, certainty over nuance, direction over discussion. When you give long explanations to people who don't process that way, they don't feel informed. They feel overwhelmed. And overwhelmed people don't respect you more. They resist, withdraw, or quietly ignore you. This is why you can explain something perfectly and still watch it be misunderstood. The invisible cost of over-explaining. Every time you explain yourself again, you spend energy, you lose momentum, you reopen a closed decision. Machiavelli believed momentum was essential to power. A leader who keeps stopping to explain appears uncertain, even if they're not. And uncertainty spreads faster than logic. Soon, others start questioning things not because something is wrong, but because questioning has been normalized. This is how authority slowly erodes, not through rebellion, but through endless conversation. What Machiavelli actually advised. Machiavelli didn't say, "Never explain." He said, "Choose carefully who gets access to your reasoning. To some people, you give reasons. To most, you give outcomes. Not out of cruelty, out of realism. Because when people see that decisions stand, that they don't bend with every question, they stop testing. And when testing stops, respect begins. The mistake is not explaining once. The mistake is explaining again to someone who already showed they won't or can't process it. Machiavelli would say this is not patience. It's misplaced effort. Power starts when you recognize. Not everyone is meant to understand. Not every question deserves an answer. Not every conversation should continue. Once you see that, you stop feeling frustrated, and people start responding to you differently, without you saying more. Machiavelli understood something most people never learn. The problem is not that you explain. The problem is that you explain to everyone. In his world, courts, armies, councils, explaining to the wrong person was not just tiring. It was dangerous. So he learned to sort people quickly, not by intelligence tests, not by education, but by behavior. The first signal, how people react to decisions. Machiavelli paid close attention to what happened after a decision was made. Some people reacted like this. They listened. They adjusted. They moved on. Others reacted differently. They kept asking questions. They reopened settled matters. They looked for exceptions. This told Machiavelli everything. The first group didn't need explanations to comply. The second group didn't want explanations. They wanted leverage. So he learned a rule. If someone accepts outcomes first, they may deserve reasoning later. If someone resists outcomes, reasoning will not help them. The second signal, what questions people ask. Not all questions are equal. Machiavelli noticed that capable people ask questions that move things forward. What's the goal? What's the constraint? What happens next? But people who weaken authority ask different questions. Why me? Why this way? Who decided this? These questions are not about understanding. They are about position. They test whether a decision is firm or open to pressure. Machiavelli advised leaders to answer these questions carefully, or not at all, because once people sense that every decision can be debated, they begin debating everything. The third signal, how people handle simple instructions. Machiavelli believed this was the clearest test. Before giving complex reasoning, he watched how people handled simple direction. Did they follow it? Did they look for loopholes? Did they delay? Someone who struggles with simple clarity will drown in complex explanation. So instead of explaining more, Machiavelli simplified his demands and watched reactions. Those who complied earned trust. Those who resisted earned distance. Here is the mistake most people make. They think explanation creates respect. But Machiavelli saw that for many people, explanation creates permission. Permission to argue, permission to negotiate, permission to challenge. Once permission exists, authority weakens quietly. This is why Machiavelli warned leaders not to expose their reasoning to everyone, not because the reasoning was wrong, but because it would be misused. Machiavelli believed every leader needed a small inner circle. A few people who could think ahead, could understand complexity, could be trusted with reasoning. This group got explanations, context, strategy. Everyone else got direction. Not because they were worthless, but because systems collapse when everyone feels entitled to full understanding. Clarity is not the same as equality. You don't need to cut people off. You don't need to be rude. You don't need to dominate conversations. You just need to stop assuming that every person deserves the same level of access. Some people earn explanation through responsibility. Others earn it through consistency. Most never earn it at all. and that's normal. When you explain less to the wrong people, conflict decreases, resistance fades, your words carry more weight. Machiavelli didn't argue endlessly. He observed, adjusted, and positioned himself correctly. When you stop explaining yourself, the first thing that happens is discomfort. Not yours, theirs. People are used to explanations because explanations make them feel involved. When that stops, they feel unsettled. They don't know where they stand anymore. And uncertainty makes most people uneasy. At first, they try to pull you back into the old pattern. They ask more questions. They repeat the same ones. They say things like, "I'm just trying to understand," or "You're being unclear." What they are really saying is that the usual flow has been interrupted. They no longer feel in control of the interaction. Niccolo Machiavelli understood this reaction very well. He knew that when people lose access to reasoning, they don't become curious. They become restless. And restlessness often turns into testing behavior. So the questions increase. The tone changes slightly. There is a hint of challenge where there used to be agreement. This is not because your decision was wrong. It's because the person is trying to see if silence means weakness. Most people misread this moment. They feel the tension and rush to fix it. They explain again. They clarify. They soften their position. And the moment they do, the pressure stops. The other person relaxes. Not because they understand, but because the old order has been restored. This is the trap. Machiavelli observed that authority is not destroyed all at once. It erodes slowly, through small concessions that feel polite and reasonable at the time. One explanation turns into another. One clarification becomes an argument. And before you notice it, every decision requires approval. But when you hold your position and don't rush to explain, something else happens. After the initial discomfort, most people adjust. They stop asking the same questions. They stop pushing. They begin to accept that not everything is open for discussion. This acceptance doesn't come from understanding. It comes from recognition. They recognize that your decisions don't move just because they are uncomfortable. And that recognition changes behavior. People listen more closely when they know you won't repeat yourself endlessly. They pay attention because they know they won't get unlimited chances. Your words start to carry weight again, not because they are longer or clearer, but because they are final. There is also another reaction, one that Machiavelli warned about. A small number of people don't adjust. They escalate. They become sarcastic, passive, dismissive. They question your motives instead of your reasoning. This is not confusion, it's resistance. These people relied on explanation as a way to slow things down or regain influence. When that tool disappears, frustration shows itself. This reaction is important information. It tells you exactly who depended on access to your reasoning to feel equal. And Machiavelli would say this is not someone you try harder with. It's someone you manage carefully or keep at a distance. Silence in this sense is not avoidance. It is a filter. It separates those who can function with structure from those who need constant reassurance. It shows you who respects outcomes and who only respects discussion. Another change happens quietly over time. When you stop explaining, people start filling in the gaps themselves. They assume there is a reason, even if they don't know it. They assume there is intention behind your decisions. This assumption often works in your favor. Machiavelli knew that people fear what they don't fully understand, but they also respect it. Mystery creates gravity. Overexposure dissolves it. This doesn't mean you become distant or silent in everything. It means you stop narrating your thinking to people who can't use it properly. You let results speak. You let consistency speak. You let time speak. Eventually, something stabilizes. Conversations become shorter. Meetings end faster. Fewer people challenge you without preparation. Not because you demanded respect, but because the environment changed. Machiavelli believed that power is not about force. It's about managing expectations. When people expect explanation, they demand it. When they stop expecting it, they adapt. And the most important shift happens inside you. You stop feeling the need to convince. You stop feeling drained after conversations. You stop replaying discussions in your head, wondering how to explain things better next time. Not because you stopped caring, but because you stopped misunderstanding your role. You are not responsible for making everyone understand. You are responsible for making decisions that hold. And once that becomes clear, explaining becomes a choice again, not a reflex. That is the difference Machiavelli understood. Once you stop explaining by default, a new question appears. When should you explain, if at all? This is where Machiavelli's thinking becomes practical rather than philosophical. He did not believe in silence for its own sake. He believed in timing. Niccolò Machiavelli observed that explanation is powerful only when it is rare. When people receive it occasionally, they value it. When they receive it constantly, they feel entitled to it. So he treated explanation like a limited resource, not a moral obligation. Powerful people explain only after something has already been accepted, never before. Once a decision is carried out, once direction is followed, then context may be shared. This order matters. If explanation comes first, it invites debate. If it comes later, it feels like insight. Most people reverse this without realizing it. They explain in advance, hoping agreement will follow. Machiavelli saw this as backward. Agreement rarely comes from understanding. It comes from seeing that things move forward regardless of personal opinion. This is why powerful people often explain calmly after the fact, not to justify themselves, but to frame reality. At that point, the explanation doesn't weaken authority. It reinforces it. It sounds less like persuasion and more like clarification. Another important distinction Machiavelli made was between explanation and reassurance. Explanation deals with structure and reasoning. Reassurance deals with emotion. The mistake many people make is mixing the two. When someone is anxious, insecure, or resistant, no amount of explanation will settle them. They are not looking for logic. They are looking for comfort. Powerful people recognize this quickly. Instead of over-explaining, they shorten communication. They reduce options. They make things simpler, not deeper. This is not manipulation. It is alignment. You don't speak philosophy to someone who wants certainty. You don't give strategy to someone who needs direction. You meet people at the level they can actually use. Machiavelli also understood that explanation works best when it is selective. Not everyone needs to know everything. In fact, when too many people are given reasoning, the reasoning itself loses strength. It becomes fragmented, misquoted, and misunderstood. So powerful people explain fully to a few, partially to some, and not at all to most. This creates clarity instead of confusion. It also protects ideas from being diluted. Another thing happens when explanation becomes intentional instead of automatic. You start observing reactions. You notice who listens carefully and who interrupts, who asks thoughtful questions and who looks for loopholes, who uses the information responsibly and who uses it to push boundaries. Over time, this observation sharpens your judgment. You stop guessing who deserves access. You know. Machiavelli believed that good judgment was built through exposure, not theory. Leaders learned by watching how people behaved once they were trusted. Explanation was one of the tools he used to test that trust. There is also a personal shift that happens when you stop over-explaining. You become more precise. You speak less, but with more intention. You don't rush to fill silence. You don't feel pressure to justify every move. Silence stops feeling awkward and starts feeling neutral. You realize that not every gap needs to be filled. Not every question needs an immediate answer. Time itself can communicate firmness better than words. This changes how people approach you. They prepare more. They think before speaking. They choose their questions carefully, because they sense that access is no longer guaranteed. Machiavelli understood that power is maintained not by constant effort, but by consistency. When people know what to expect from you, they adjust. When they don't, they probe. Explanation used carefully removes the need for probing. By this stage, explaining becomes a strategic act rather than an emotional reaction. You explain because it serves a purpose, not because you feel cornered. You explain to strengthen structure, not to relieve tension. And this is the difference between people who are always exhausted by conversations and people whose words seem to land effortlessly. One group reacts, the other decides. Machiavelli would say that once you reach this point, you are no longer managing conversations, you are managing positions. And from there, authority becomes much easier to maintain. Over time, people stop reacting to what you say and start reacting to what they expect from you. This is the quiet effect Machiavelli understood better than most. Reputation is not built by explanation. It is built by consistency. Niccolò Machiavelli observed that people remember patterns, not arguments. They don't recall your reasons. They recall how firm you were. They recall whether decisions stayed in place or changed after pressure. And those memories shape how they approach you next time. When you stop explaining by default, something subtle begins to happen. People become more careful around you. Not fearful, careful. They choose their words more deliberately. They think before questioning. They sense that conversations with you have weight. This is not because you became intimidating. It's because you became predictable in the right way. Your decisions don't drift. Your stance doesn't soften just to keep things comfortable. Over time, people learn that pushing doesn't work. Machiavelli believed this was essential. A leader whose position shifts under pressure invites constant testing. A leader whose position holds creates stability. People may not like every decision, but they stop trying to reshape them through conversation. Another change happens in how people talk about you when you are not present. They stop describing you as someone who talks a lot or explains everything. Instead, they say things like, once they decide, that's it, or they don't waste time. These descriptions matter more than praise. They shape expectations before you even enter the room. And expectations do half the work for you. You'll notice that some people begin to seek your explanation more carefully. They don't ask casually anymore. They ask at the right time, with more thought. This is when explanation regains its power, because it is no longer assumed. When you do explain at this stage, people listen differently. They don't interrupt. They don't rush ahead. They treat it as something valuable, not something they are entitled to. Machiavelli understood that scarcity creates value. Words are no different. When explanations are rare, they carry authority. When they are constant, they blend into noise. There will also be people who slowly drift away. These are the ones who relied on endless discussion to feel important. When that disappears, the relationship no longer serves them. This is not a loss. It is a sorting process. Machiavelli never tried to keep everyone close. He accepted that power clarifies relationships. Some people move closer, others move away. What matters is that the structure becomes cleaner. As your reputation shifts, your internal experience changes as well. You stop rehearsing conversations in your head. You stop wondering how to phrase things better next time. You feel less tension before speaking. This calm is not confidence. It is alignment. You are no longer acting against how people actually behave. You are acting with that reality in mind. Eventually, something important happens. People stop confusing access with importance. They stop assuming that just because they are present, they are owed explanation. This resets the balance in conversations. Machiavelli believed this balance was necessary for any system to function. When everyone feels equal in discussion, nothing moves. When roles are clear, progress becomes possible. You will still explain at times, but now it will be deliberate. You will explain to build understanding where it can exist, not to chase it where it cannot. You will explain to strengthen structure, not to relieve discomfort. At this point, authority no longer feels like effort. You are not enforcing it, you are maintaining it. And maintenance requires far less energy than constant repair. People around you adjust without being told. They learn how to approach you. They learn what kind of questions are worth asking. They learn that your words are not invitations to endless discussion. This is the long-term result Machiavelli understood. Power is not a moment. It is an environment. And the way you speak, or don't speak, shapes that environment every day. By the time this process settles, you will notice something simple. You say less, but what you say matters more. And most importantly, things move forward without you having to explain why. At some point, you realize the real change was never about other people. It was about you, about what you expected from conversations and what you were unconsciously asking for in return. For a long time, explaining felt necessary because it gave you relief. Relief from tension. Relief from misunderstanding. Relief from being seen as unreasonable. Explanation wasn't just communication. It was reassurance. Niccolò Machiavelli understood this dynamic clearly. He knew that the desire to be understood often hides a deeper need, the need to be accepted. And that need, if left unchecked, quietly weakens authority. When you stop explaining by default, you also stop asking for permission. You no longer need agreement to move forward. You no longer need everyone to be comfortable before action happens. This is not because you became indifferent. It's because you became grounded. There is a calm that comes from accepting a simple truth. Most people will never fully understand your reasoning, and they don't need to. Expecting them to creates unnecessary friction. Releasing that expectation creates space. You begin to speak from a different place, not from urgency, not from defense, but from clarity. Your words become fewer because they are no longer carrying emotional weight. They are simply directions, observations, or decisions. This also changes how silence feels. Silence is no longer awkward. It is no longer something you rush to fill. Silence becomes neutral, sometimes even useful. It gives people room to process. It gives you room to observe. Machiavelli believed observation was more powerful than persuasion. The person who watches carefully learns where to step and where not to. The person who explains constantly reveals themselves too early. As you settle into this way of operating, frustration fades. Not because people suddenly improve, but because you stop fighting their nature. You stop trying to pull understanding out of places where it doesn't exist. This acceptance is not cynical. It is practical. You don't get angry at fire for being hot. You don't argue with gravity. You adjust your behavior based on reality. Human behavior is no different. You also stop overestimating your responsibility. You are responsible for your decisions and actions. You are not responsible for everyone's comprehension. Once that boundary is clear, conversations become lighter. Another quiet shift happens. You become harder to manipulate. When you don't explain everything, people can't twist your words as easily. They can't take pieces of your reasoning out of context. They are left with outcomes, not material to argue against. This doesn't make you closed. It makes you contained. Over time, you also become more selective with your energy. You notice which conversations actually lead somewhere and which ones loop endlessly. You choose differently. You disengage earlier. You protect your attention. Machiavelli would say this is wisdom, not withdrawal. Power is not about being present everywhere. It's about being effective where it matters. By now, the habit of over-explaining has weakened. You no longer feel the urge to justify every decision or clarify every misunderstanding. You let people sit with uncertainty. You let reality teach where words fail. And something important becomes clear. The people who matter adapt. They learn how to interact with you. They meet you at the level you set. The people who don't adapt were never aligned with you to begin with. This is not loss. It is refinement. In the end, Machiavelli's lesson is simple, even if it's uncomfortable. Power doesn't come from saying the right thing at the right time. It comes from understanding human limits and acting within them. When you stop explaining unnecessarily, you are not withdrawing from the world. You are aligning with how it actually works. You conserve your energy. You reduce resistance. You move forward without friction. And perhaps most importantly, you regain something essential: mental quiet. The kind that comes from no longer trying to carry everyone with you. You don't need to announce this shift. You don't need to defend it. You simply live it. And over time, the world adjusts. By this point, the pattern should be clear. Not as an idea, but as something you can feel. Conversations feel lighter. Decisions feel cleaner. You no longer carry the weight of making sure everyone understands every step you take. This is the final shift Machiavelli understood. Power is not something you display. It is something others adjust to. When you stop explaining unnecessarily, people don't suddenly become wiser. They become more observant. They watch what you do instead of waiting for what you say. And behavior, not words, is what shapes reality. Niccolò Machiavelli knew that most people learn through consequence, not reasoning. They don't change because something was explained well. They change because they see what happens when decisions stand. This is why action always mattered more to him than persuasion. Over time, this creates a quiet authority around you. Not loud, not aggressive, just stable. People stop expecting long discussions. They stop pushing small boundaries. They stop assuming everything is negotiable. You'll notice fewer pointless conversations, fewer repeated explanations, fewer moments where you walk away feeling drained or irritated. Not because people became easier, but because you stopped meeting them at the wrong level. There is also a deeper benefit that rarely gets talked about. You begin to trust yourself more. When you no longer rely on explaining to feel justified, you become more comfortable standing by your choices. Even when others don't fully agree. Even when they don't fully understand. This doesn't make you stubborn. It makes you grounded. You start noticing how often people use conversation as a way to avoid action. How often questions are asked not to move forward, but to delay. Once you see this, you stop taking it personally. You stop trying to rescue every discussion. And that changes your pace. Life moves faster when you don't stop to convince everyone at every step. Progress accelerates when decisions are allowed to exist without constant explanation. This is true in work, in relationships, and in any position where responsibility exists. Machiavelli never promised peace through understanding. He promised effectiveness through clarity. And clarity, paradoxically, often requires saying less. By now, explaining has returned to its proper place. Not as a habit, but as a tool. You use it when it strengthens structure. You withhold it when it weakens direction. You are no longer reacting. You are choosing. This is not about being distant or cold. It's about respecting reality. Some people need guidance. Some need structure. Some need distance. Treating everyone the same is not fairness. It is confusion. As this settles, you may realize something else. You feel less need to prove yourself, less need to be right out loud, less need to correct every misunderstanding. Your energy is no longer scattered across endless conversations. It's focused. And focus is one of the quiet foundations of power. In the end, Machiavelli's lesson is not about silence. It's about alignment. Aligning your behavior with how people actually respond, not how you wish they would. When you do that, resistance drops. Friction fades. Things begin to work. You don't announce this change. You don't explain it. You simply live differently. And people respond without being told why. If this perspective helped you see conversations, authority, and explanation in a new way, take a moment to like the video. It helps this channel reach people who are ready for this kind of clarity. And if you want more content that looks at power, behavior, and human nature through a Machiavellian lens, subscribe to the channel. We'll continue building on these ideas step by step. Thanks for watching.